Once again, What It Takes Radio brings you into the Transplant Zone, a very special place, oftentimes for very special people. And today we hear the story. Indeed, our friend Gary is still in the Transplant Zone, and after a good life, Dick Cheney has left. But their stories are very similar. Let's just take a few minutes to think about that. Greetings once again. This is Stan, the friend of Gary, uh, putting him in the transplant zone and now enjoying the friendship and fellowship as he is reaching out to tell people about what he is going through as he is waiting for a heart transplant at the Duke Hospital. And I'm going to be making my way up there shortly because he is going through all the procedures to be ready. The doctors think that perhaps in the near future, he will be ready for what they sometimes simply call a procedure. Now, some of us would call it surgery or major surgery or an operation, but it's mostly a procedure. But obviously, it's an incredibly serious procedure requiring a great deal of talent and skill. And oh my goodness, can you imagine what it must be like to be a surgeon? I mean, boy, do I admire those people who will be doing that kind of work. Talking about doing good work for people. Boy, that has to be some of the real honors. However, the reason I'm jumping in is I'm certainly going to make the trip up there and I'm going to hopefully get some procedure stuff from him and before he goes. And then, of course, we'll be talking to him shortly after he comes out of the procedure, whenever that happens to be. But obviously, for many of you, this is already a news day because, first of all, obviously, the election is taking place, and that will have some consequences, both politically, economically, and socially here in America. But at the same time, the news broke, which is now taking part of the news cycle away from the election, was that former American President Dick Cheney, Richard Cheney, has passed away at the age of 84. Now, it's very similar to my good friend Gary. He's rough and tough and rugged and really a go-getter. Well, Dick Cheney was rough and tough and rugged and a real go-getter too, but he too had a major heart attack as a young man, very young man. And he struggled through a variety of heart failures and surgeries, very much like my friend Gary has, until finally they just had to give up on those procedures, and he received a heart transplant. And of course, it changed his life profoundly. He was able to live a fairly normal life. With his family, with his children, with his grandchildren, and enjoyed. He has now passed away at the age of 84. Certainly a full life, a life well lived. And so we're going to encourage you now to remember that in the story. I'm sure it will be mentioned. And so as you are hearing more and more of the story of Dick Cheney, compare it to what he was doing, what led him to a heart transplant, and then how well he was able and how he was able to live after that heart transplant. And I'm hoping the very same thing will happen for Gary. He is still, except for his heart, he is full of heartfelt energy and compassion and empathy, and he's always trying to reach out and do good for other people. So I'm hoping that I can be helpful so that he will have, like Dick Cheney had, a successful procedure, and then he will also have a good and longer life. Yeah, it always will come to an end sometime, but we always live on the edge all of the time. And so we celebrate that opportunity to do good for others, and to remember that eventually we want to always ask ourselves the question, how do we want to be remembered? That's the important thing. And what I'm discovering more and more is the answer to that question often will be decided not when we were young and famous and an athletic star, not when we were perhaps a big shot corporation or a major wheeler dealer mover shaker. Oftentimes, how you will be remembered will how well you put in the last quarter of your life, sometimes the last 10 years of your life, maybe just the last few years of your life will be the way you may be remembered. It may be literally, as we say, in your encore that you will be, well, that's what they'll say. Let me tell you about my friend. Let me tell you about my mentor. Let me tell you about the person who challenged me. Let me tell you about the person who really made a life good for me. Let me tell you about the person I miss deeply and dearly because they loved me so much and I love them back. Whatever it will be, always be asking yourself the question today, if I passed away, how do I want to be remembered? Because we will be remembered in some way. As I often said in late night radio, just let that sit on your head for a while, perhaps stir your mind, maybe even touch your healthy heart. I'm Stan, the radio man for the Transplant Zone, and speaking for my good friend Gary, who is in the zone, awaiting, indeed, a new heart. Till next time, and that'll be soon. Bye for now.